Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Eerie Hour with Erich. For those who wish to hear tales of the strange, the macabre, and various urban legends, you have come to the right place. Tonight, join us around the fire as Erich reads a spine-tingling tale for your entertainment.
Prepare to be scared, for this is
Eerie Hour with Erich. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here is your host, Erich.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Eerie Hour with Erich. I'm your host, Eerie Erich, and once again, welcome to Around the Fire, where we tell scary stories of the strange, the macabre, and various urban legends. I'm sorry I've been away for so long, my friends, but now I'm back to read you more spine-tingling and bone-chilling tales of terror. But the weather has been most uncooperative lately. So instead of seeing me in front of the camera, like you usually do, tonight is just going to be another night of you hearing my voice. But, like my previous video, is my voice coming through your screens, or is it coming somewhere from beyond the grave? For tonight's tale, it concerns two farmers who, out of boredom one day, decide to build a scarecrow for use on their land. But as time goes on, the two farmers discover that the scarecrow that they built may be more lifelike than they intended. Tonight's tale is from the third book of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark by Mr. Alvin Schwartz, and it is entitled Harold. But first, let me get my reading glasses. There we are. Harold. When it got hot in the valley, Thomas and Alfred drove their cows up to a cool green pasture in the mountains to graze. Usually they stayed there with the cows for 2 months, then they brought them down to the valley again. The work was easy enough, but oh, it was boring. All day the two men tended their cows. At night they went back to the tiny hut where they lived. They ate supper and worked in the garden and went to sleep. It was always the same. Then Thomas had an idea that changed everything. "Let's make a doll the size of a man," he said. "It would be fun to make, and we could put it in the garden to scare away the birds." "It should look like Harold," Alfred said. Harold was a farmer they both hated. They made the doll out of old sacks stuffed with straw. They gave it a pointy nose like Harold's and tiny eyes like his. Then they added dark hair and a twisted frown. Of course, they also gave it Harold's name. Each morning on their way to the pasture, they tied Harold to a pole in the garden to scare away the birds. Each night they brought him inside so that he wouldn't get ruined if it rained. When they were feeling playful, they would talk to him. One of them might say, "How are the vegetables growing today, Harold?" Then the other, making believe he was Harold, would answer in a crazy voice, "Very slowly." They both would laugh, but not Harold. Whenever something went wrong, they took it out on Harold. They would curse at him, even kick or punch him. Sometimes one of them would take the food they were eating, which they both were sick of, and smear it on the doll's face. "How do you like that stew, Harold?" he would ask. "Well, you'd better eat it, or else." Then the two men would howl with laughter. One night, after Thomas had wiped Harold's face with food, Harold grunted. Did you hear that? Alfred asked. It was Harold, Thomas said. I was watching him when it happened. I can't believe it. How could he grunt? Alfred asked. He's just a sack of straw. It's not possible. Let's throw him in the fire, said Thomas, and that will be that. Let's not do anything stupid, said Alfred. We don't know what's going on. When we move the cows down, we'll leave him behind. For now, let's just keep an eye on him. So they left Harold sitting in the corner of the hut. They didn't talk to him or take him outside anymore. Now and then, the doll grunted, but that was all. After a few days, they decided there was nothing to be afraid of. Maybe a mouse or some insects had gotten inside Harold and were making those sounds. So Thomas and Alfred went back to their old ways. Each morning, they put Harold out in the garden, and each night they brought him back into the hut. When they felt playful, they joked with him. When they felt mean, they treated him as badly as ever. Then one night, Alfred noticed something that frightened him. Harold is growing, he said. I was thinking the same thing, Thomas said. Maybe it's just our imagination, Alfred replied. We have been up here on this mountain too long. The next morning, while they were eating, Harold stood up and walked out of the hut. He climbed up on the roof and trotted back and forth like a horse on its hind legs. All day and all night long he trotted like that. In the morning, Harold climbed down and stood in a far corner of the pasture. The men had no idea what he would do next. They were afraid. They decided to take the cows down into the valley that same day. When they left, Harold was nowhere in sight. They felt as if they had escaped a great danger and began joking and singing. But when they had gone only a mile or two, they realized they had forgotten to bring the milking stools. Neither one wanted to go back for them, but the stools would cost a lot to replace. There really is nothing to be afraid of, they told one another. After all, what could a doll do? They drew straws to see which one would go back. It was Thomas. I'll catch up with you, he said, and Alfred walked on toward the valley. When Alfred came to a rise in the path, he looked back for Thomas. He did not see him anywhere. But he did see Harold. The doll was on the roof of the hut again. As Alfred watched, Harold kneeled and stretched out a bloody skin to dry in the sun. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what would you have done? Would you have gone with Thomas back to the hut? Or would you have stayed with Alfred and the cows? And speaking of going places, I must be off. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Eerie Hour with Erich. If you like this episode, please, by all means, give it a like, and also hit subscribe and hit the notification bell to receive all the latest updates from Eerie Hour with Erich. And if you like this video, please feel free to share it with your friends, your family, your coworkers, and anybody else whom you interact with on a daily basis. And also, don't forget to check us out on both Facebook as well as Instagram. And as always, before I leave, my friends, remember this. Dreams can become reality, but at the same time, dreams can also become nightmares. But can nightmares become reality? You be the judge. Once again, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to tonight's episode. Tune in for the next one, if you dare.